I will just use... Okay, let's slowly start. I think we still try to create the panel here, but I think the panelists are already here. And I think that's the most important thing. Warm welcome from my side to this panel on the Eastern Partnership on this afternoon. Thank you for coming, and I'm very honored to moderate this distinguished panel. My name is Stefan Meister. I'm head of the program for International Order and Democracy at the German Council on Foreign Relations in Berlin. And we are the partner of this panel of the Bled Forum. I just want to mention that we are organizing a think tank, Eastern Partnership think tank dialogue in cooperation with the Commission to develop fresh ideas on how to deal with the challenges in the Eastern neighborhood region of the EU, but also to improve the visibility and exchange of think tanks from the Eastern Partnership region with the EU. And this panel also somehow takes place in the context of this cooperation. Just a couple of words in the beginning about the region. So there are growing internal and geopolitical challenges in the Eastern Partnership region. We had the authoritarian crackdown in Belarus last year. In the South Caucasus last autumn, the Second Karabakh War took place, where Russia and Turkey increasingly compete for influence. At the same time, Russia is using its position on Crimea to increase its military role in the Black Sea region, with an impact not only on Ukraine and on Georgia, but also on EU member states like Romania and Bulgaria. And I think this is something which we will have to deal increasingly within the next years. The events in Belarus and the Second Karabakh War have shown the limited impact of the EU on developments in these countries and in the region. It is first of all Russia who is changing the rules of the game in the common neighborhood with the EU and has the goal to push out the EU, NATO and the US from parts of the region. The new US President Biden seems to have limited interest in the entire region and has different foreign and domestic policy priorities, first of all focusing on China. So it's still up to the EU and its member states to engage more in the Eastern neighborhood, and Eastern Partnership Summit in December under the Slovenian presidency is a chance to upgrade EU's policy, or at least to respond to some of these challenges more. So I didn't say there's no response, but I think we really need to discuss this region and Russia, where the rules of the game are really changing now. Beside the positive developments in Moldova with the presidential and parliamentary elections, we observe democratic backsliding also in forerunner states like Georgia in the context of last October parliamentary election and the upcoming local election in the beginning of October this year. So we can observe an interaction of developments in the EU and its neighborhood. So there seems to be that the transformative power of the EU is decreasing. And I think this is particularly important for the Eastern neighborhood. Yeah. Wow. So it's a great honor for me. Let's go to the speakers here. Thank you. Thank you. So Romanian Foreign Minister. Thank you very much. It's a great honor for me to welcome Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, a Belarusian human rights activist and key independent politician of her country. She will give a short 5 to 7
Take mine.
5 to 7 minutes. No, it's working. Keynote in the beginning. And then we will start a panel discussion. And she will also come on the panel, so you can also ask questions to her later. Further speakers of this panel are Bogdan Aurescu, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Romania, really experienced foreign politician, I think really an important Yeah, thank you. Very experienced foreign politician. Pleasure to have you here also on this panel. We have Katerina Maternova, It's still working, yeah.
Yes.
Deputy Director General for Neighborhood and Enlargement negotiations of the European Commission, and very helpful also in setting up this think tank network. Yeah, thank you very much also for the support from the Commission side. We have Orisha Licevic, Head and Research Fellow of Ukraine Forum, Russia and Eurasia at Chatham House, who really did a great job on Ukraine in the last years, I would say. We have Tamuras Janjalia, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of Georgia. Warm welcome for you. And in the last moment, you just stepped into the panel, which is a great pleasure also for us. Jakub Kolanek, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Czech Republic. So my idea of this panel is that after the short keynote, all speakers can respond also to Svetlana. And then we will discuss about the main challenges in the Eastern Partnership region. And then we have a second round looking to the summit in December, asking so what next, what to do, and how to upgrade also the Eastern Partnership. So it's quite broad, but then you will also have a chance to ask questions. So I would give Svetlana now the word for this keynote. Maybe you go. You can also sit here. Maybe you just sit here if you like.
The microphone is not working.
Ah, yeah. So maybe better you. No, maybe it's working. So maybe you go there. Please. Keynote is also nice in standing position. So great pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. Dear ladies and gentlemen, I'm really grateful for this opportunity to speak in front of you all today on behalf of the Belarusian people. And I would like to congratulate Slovenia on organizing such an outstanding forum and bringing together such a distinguished groups of leaders. You know, Eastern Partnership program opened many opportunities for Belarusians. Multiple projects of European partnership helped Belarusian civil society to become more resilient, integrated, and inclusive. The program also defined the way my country could politically cooperate with our European friends. However, the regime was the main reason why Belarus didn't fully enjoy the benefits of the programs provided. The regime didn't see much value in Eastern Partnership as it only cared about staying in the power. And in the end, it deprived Belarusian people from their right to participate in the partnership. In June this year, the regime announced the intention to freeze its membership. The declared suspension harms the interests of our country and contradicts the needs and expectations of Belarusian people. These measures only weaken or undermine our political and economic independence and sovereignty, as well as hit the interests of ordinary Belarusian people. The people of Belarus, democratic forces, and civil society do not recognize the decision of illegitimate government. We are building a new democratic Belarus that will return to the constructive format of participation in the Eastern Partnership and will be seeking consultations with the European Union on the path forward. New Belarus will protect and control the borders with the European Union, combat transitional crimes and illegal migration to the European Union through our territory, and will rejoin the readmission agreement. We commit to provide the EU with reliable information on key areas of cooperation and hold consultations on the Astrovets nuclear power plant. And we would like to emphasize the need for Belarus participation in the Eastern Partnership and our will to expand it. We want to use the Eastern Partnership potential to the fullest. Belarusians have benefited and will definitely benefit from projects from support to independent media and SMEs, civil society, youth, people-to-people contacts, infrastructure projects, liberalization of trade and services. The EU should suspend all the consultations with the Belarusian officials while they are still a part of the repressive state apparatus. Representatives of democratic Belarus should be invited to replace the illegitimate regime on the political level and in all European partnership tracks and activities. The European Union should expand cooperation with the non-public sector, commercial organizations, civil society and experts community within the European Partnership Framework. The Belarusian National Platform of the Eastern Partnership Civil Society Forum is crucial in guiding the EU policy towards Belarus. It is paramount that EU institutions and officials engage with its members and experts as equal partners. The EU funds should be redirected to support research and educational programs, including distance learning, internship programs for professionals of the democratic Belarus in public administrations, law enforcement agencies, and the private sector. The regime has completely politicized or abused the topic of climate change to extract resources without actual progress, and we want to develop a genuine agenda. The EU could also develop a special track of expert consultations for Belarusian SMEs on their modernization to increase their competitiveness on the global market. To support civil society and citizens of Belarus, the EU can simplify visa procedures, reduce or abolish the fees of Schengen and national visas. All EU embassies should be able to issue humanitarian visas to help those Belarusians who need to leave the country because of repressions. And currently just Lithuanian and Polish embassies are working to give these humanitarian visas, and they are really overwhelmed. The Eastern Partnership Summit should not welcome the delegates of the regime, but rather delegates of the democratic forces, who have the legitimacy to speak on behalf of people of Belarus. We are ready to participate in all events, including high-level meetings like the summit. And we also suggest holding an additional high-level event with the European Union and Eastern Partnership countries during the summit. It would be used to agree on the forms of participation of democratic Belarus in the Eastern Partnership in current conditions. We will map out our prospects of cooperation when the democratic change in our country happens. The Eastern Partnership is an inclusive partnership, a partnership for the people. The Belarusian people, not Belarusian government, should benefit from it. European Union launched Eastern Partnership 12 years ago, and this program proved to be transformational. And Belarus needs transformation, a democratic transformation. And Belarusians voted for changes. And the Eastern Partnership is definitely the part of the solution for these changes to happen. So let us work together for these changes. Thank you very much, and welcome for discussion.
Thank you very much, also for being to the point. There's still some technical problems, but yeah, let's try if it works. Maybe I just change. Yeah, let's ask the Czech foreign minister first, because I think you have been quite active in Eastern Partnership in the past, and I also want just to help to build this bridge also from Svetlana. So what are the challenges in the region, and what the EU can do for Belarus at this point?
Okay, I hope it's working though. Well, thank you. And you know, since I'm a bit of a late addition to the panel, I'm really honoured to speak first. And you know, I must say, I'm really happy you sort of you recognised the role of the Czech Republic in the Eastern Partnership, because with all due respect to Poland and Sweden, the so-called founding fathers of the Eastern Partnership, and they've done a lot of good work, but I dare say that I'm also proud to count my country, the Czech Republic, also among the founding fathers of the Eastern Partnership. Well, I mean, to answer your question, though, you know, interestingly enough, when we were getting ready for our panel, Bogdan told me, well, Jakub, we should say something nice about the Eastern Partnership, and most certainly we should, but also, I believe we should be realistic, you know, quite frankly, you know, at the moment, the Eastern Partnership has been through a lot over the past years. And I think we have to sort of say that the Eastern Partnership at the moment is at crossroads. And I think, I believe, and here I'd be, you know, a tad, but I'd be rather, or a bit critical as far as the Eastern Partnership is concerned, and more importantly, I'll be speaking about the EU. I'd say that the success of our undertaking is in a large measure commensurate with the level of our commitment to the Eastern Partnership. And I think our commitment should be measured not by, you know, lofty proclamations, but rather by tangible results of our trying on the ground. And I think in our approach to the Eastern Partnership, therefore, it's very much needed. We should be realistic. I mean, both in terms of what to expect from our partners, and yet more importantly, what we as the EU can achieve and whether we can deliver on our promises. And I think, and also we should come to recognize that you know, nowadays the Eastern Partnership countries, they have, you know, they have changed profoundly, especially in the level of their ambition, and now the whole, it's a rather diverse bunch, and we should tailor our approach accordingly. So, you know, perhaps this is to kick off our discussion.
Thank you. So that's perfect to hand over to Bogdan Aurescu, also to say something nice about the Eastern Partnership. And I think what I want to ask you also with what are the key challenges, I think there's a big discussion about security and also the EU as a security player. And I think from a Romanian perspective, Black Sea region is really important, but also your engagement on the protected conflicts. So where do you see here the EU and the main challenges, and also to be realistic? I think you are quite a realistic person, yeah, in my opinion.
Stefan, for this introduction. Well, I was joking with Jakub a little bit earlier in saying that yes, we have to say something nice about Eastern Partnership, because I think we need to have a refreshed approach on the Eastern Partnership. I think we have to give the Eastern Partnership a new value, because the challenges are very numerous and complicated. We have challenges which are general, global. They are both for EU and for non-EU states. We have the effects of the pandemic with the social-economic consequences, which are even more difficult to cope with by the states in the Eastern Partnership. We have the effects of climate change, and there is, of course, a need for the states in the Eastern Partnership as well to try to find the best instruments to fight against this. There are also, of course, conflicts, protracted conflicts that you have mentioned, and I will speak about them a little bit more immediately. But also active conflicts. There are protracted conflicts and active conflicts. Some of these protracted conflicts as we have noticed last year in autumn, as far as Nagorno-Karabakh is concerned, as we can see as far as Ukraine is concerned all the time, well, they are not only protracted, but also they become very warm and active, well, from time to time, or even, well, unexpectedly. Then we have growing democratic deficits in Eastern Partnership countries, and we need to address this challenge. We have regular migration, we have, well, sometimes extremism, radicalization. There are a lot of challenges, and all these relate to a larger concept of security. If we speak about security, I think we have to, well, take into account not only the narrow classic sense of security, but also what we call now deep security or enlarged security, including also the democratic aspects, the societal issues, and so on. And I think, indeed, EU has to, well, provide answers, and Eastern Partnership is the best instrument that we have at our disposal. And then we have this summit in December. This summit, which was postponed for, I think, 4 years. And I think we shouldn't miss this opportunity, and we count very much on the Slovenian presidency. And I've discussed with my colleague Anže in April when I visited Ljubljana, and we have discussed about the importance of this chance, that we need to make best use of this instrument. Now, what are the other challenges? Well, we see, of course, Belarus, and I think Svetlana just mentioned the challenges, and we met a little bit earlier and discussed what we can do. I think we have to keep the pressure on the regime. I think we have to, well, think again of another package of sanctions. I think that perhaps releasing some of the political prisoners is not enough. I think we have to support the well, civil society and independent media. Romania has provided last year well, 100,000 euros through the European Endowment for Democracy to support independent media and civil society in Belarus. We have provided scholarships for students which are unable to continue their studies because of their political convictions. And there are also many other ways to support Belarus. I think this plan, which was presented by the European Commission for well, support, economic support for a democratic Belarus, which was inspired by a joint initiative by the presidents of Romania, Poland, and Lithuania last year, is a very good example of how the EU can provide support and incentives for transformation. And then, well, issues related to security. Indeed, protracted conflicts represent a challenge because they, well, hamper the ability of the countries in the region to focus on the reform processes, on the normal political processes. They divide societies. They create, well, diversions in the development of this country. So we need, the EU needs to get more involved. And that's why I have taken the initiative, together with other 10 colleagues, foreign ministers of the EU, to put this on the agenda, this issue on the agenda of the Foreign Affairs Council. We have discussed this in the previous Gimnich meeting in Lisbon. And then, together with my Austrian and Lithuanian colleagues, we paid a visit to South Caucasus in June. We visited all 3 countries in South Caucasus, and we have, well, witnessed firsthand the challenges. And there is a place to be played by EU. EU can find niches of opportunity in all these well-protracted conflicts and provide support and expertise. I think there are lessons learned and conclusions that we can use. I think we need to support the democratic processes in these countries, upholding the fundamental values, the rule of law, democracy, and so on. We have to continue with the approach based on conditionalities, because this is rewarding. I think we can use the tools which are in the DCFTAs and in the association agreements. We can update some of those provisions of these agreements in order to provide the possibility for these countries to get more integrated into the EU internal market, if, of course, they perform the reform processes needed. I think we can think of formats of dialogue on security issues, focusing especially on protracted conflicts between EU and these countries. I'm thinking of not only of Armenia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, but also Ukraine and the Republic of Moldova. I think we can also take into account the possibility of creating a position of special representative for frozen conflicts or protracted conflicts and resilience. I think focusing on building resilience of these countries is extremely important. And there are many other ideas that we have presented to our colleagues. The three of us, myself, the Austrian colleague and the Lithuanian colleagues, after we paid the visit to the South Caucasus in June, and they can be followed on. But I will stop here because I don't want to speak too much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's hand over to Katerina Maternova and have a Brussels perspective, and also asking you, where do you see the main challenges in the region, having in mind the democratic backsliding also, so the internal challenges in the countries itself, and the demand also for proposals, what comes after the association agreement, but also having in mind that there's still a lot of to do on DCFTAs and association agreements in the countries itself. Yeah, please.
Thank you very much, Stefan, and it's a real pleasure to be on this panel. Is it okay if I speak like this? Yeah, okay. It's after Mr. Aurescu, it's a hard act to follow because a lot of the issues that I wanted to put on the table here are mentioned, but let me react to a few, and I'll get to your question immediately, but first let me turn back to Belarus and Svetlana's very, very convincing and very, certainly to me, words and appeal to the EU institutions. First of all, I want to say that we are impressed with the resolve of the Belarusian people and your personal commitment and sacrifice and that of your team. And I think that you expressed an emotion that is very much the one that leads our approach to Belarus. We don't recognize Mr. Lukashenko as a legitimate leader, and that's the reason why also his announcement of stepping out of the Eastern Partnership is something we don't recognize as something that we should act on. We continue considering Belarus as a country and Belarusian people as part of the Eastern Partnership with the support that we provide. First of all, the sanctions. I think the ministers referred to that, and more are going to be coming. There are over 160 people on the sanction list now, 15 economic entities, including areas of economic activity which really bite in the case of Belarus. Second is the support. We have recalibrated completely away from the support to the government and the regime into both the SMEs, but mostly to civil society victims of violence and the media, independent media, and we will continue doing that. We work very closely with you and your team, and in fact are in discussions about organizing a donor event still this fall, hopefully before the summit in the November timeframe, and we will be reaching out to all member states, but other friendly governments and other institutions to see how we can generate more support for you. And the third is solidarity with the democratic Belarus. I think Minister Aurescu already mentioned the plan that we put together of 3 billion potential package of various support from macro-financial assistance through various other instruments that we have in case there is a democratic Belarus. So for the day after, in a sense, and hopefully this can also be seen as a motivation to really the changes that the Belarusian people seem to be So I think that in that sense we are very much on the same line. So I just wanted to make sure that the Belarus angle doesn't get overshadowed by the doom and gloom about waning EU impact in the region and the decreasing role. Let me just, as I do with my students, let me just say, guys, Eastern Partnership was designed in a very different world than we live now. Who would have thought in 2000, when was it, 2009? Who would have thought that the largest army in the world, NATO, under the US leadership, would walk away from Afghanistan defeated? Who would have thought many things that have happened over the last 12 years, where we are living in a exponential world with changes, whether it's climate change, whether it's gaping inequality, whether it's this crisis, that crisis, in a sea of rolling crises, including a lot of the, you mentioned democratic deficit and others, a lot of tensions and questions in a number of member states. And I think that, as Minister Kulhanek mentioned, our EU support to Eastern Partnership is commensurate to our commitment. And since foreign policy in the EU is a collective of 27, in some countries it's higher, in some countries it's lower. And you always you have to average it out by definition. And so what we have tried to do, given the collective desire being somewhere in the middle, what we try to do on the institutional side is to come up with pragmatic and practical ways how to maintain support, how to push for reforms where we can, how to support independent actors, how to generate political will for bigger changes, and hopefully at some point the EU will be in a position to take the next step with some of the partner countries. But and as we see now, in some we are succeeding, in some we are not doing as well. But we've had incredibly positive news out of Moldova. We always had. We had a good president or a good prime minister or a reform government. We haven't had the three of them together for a long time. We now do. I think that's a very good sign. We are a little bit disappointed with my fellow Georgian friend, especially after the very personal commitment of the EU Council President's brokering agreement on the 19th of April and the Georgian government stepping out of it. That has come with a bit of a surprise, especially since the biggest tension is on the fundamental issues of democracy, which is the cohabitation with political opposition, and on issues of judicial appointments, etc. And look at Ukraine at the successful Crimea summit last week, putting back on the agenda something that we like to forget about, the fact that Russia illegally annexed Crimea, and the democratic churning in Ukraine that keeps happening. Many things that one can accuse Ukraine of, but not of not being democratic, because of the successive elections, the vibrancy of the civil society, the free press, etc. So there are positives, there are negatives. The Nagorno-Karabakh obviously is not an easy nut to crack, but I think that the commitment to work with the region, the commitment to push for positive changes when the opportunities are there and provide support is very much there. So I wouldn't necessarily see it as negatively as we opened, and hope for also as a result of the summit for a positive momentum.
Thank Thank you very much. And how to say it, I worked for a German political foundation the last 2 years in the South Caucasus. And if you look from the region and from the neighborhoods, you have different perspectives, yeah. But I think it's important to have these two views also from both sides. And I just wanted to remind that Eastern Partnership started after the Russian-Georgian war, yeah. So I think it was important for this initiative also as a reaction to it. So I think the security challenge was already there. So maybe that's a good point to hand over to the Georgian Deputy Minister. Also asking you about the main challenges. You are in a quite tense region, yeah, so I think South Caucasus is not becoming easier. But at the same time, I just have to mention this also a little bit provocative. I already did this. Georgia recently refused funding from the EU macro-financial assistance program. And we also know how much the country was hit by the pandemic, heavily depending on tourism sector. So is there also a change of the compass of Georgia? I just want to add this as a question. In a very, very difficult situation, the country is with its security and political environment.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So we are starting with a provocative question and regarding the course and regarding the situation of Georgia, but let's start from the challenges which we have and which we were having during the last 1.5 years. So during this period, so we experienced a really difficult period, and with regard with this deadly pandemic, and really difficult period as well regarding our economic development, and what you have mentioned as well. The support of international community and the support of European Union was really helpful for this time, and we got support, financial support from our partners, and we used it as well during the pandemic period, and we are really grateful for this. Unfortunately, for this period, the pandemic is continuing, but we have opened our economy and we are getting now some benefits from it. So this year we are experiencing already 12.9% of GDP growth, which is really important for us. And as well, in parallel, we are having the mass vaccination process of our population, which is helpful as well to get more economic benefits and get, as you have mentioned, more tourist benefits. So we opened our borders and more tourists have started to come to Georgia. We are not heavily dependent on tourists, but it's one of the main sectors of our economy, and it's an important sector of our economy. Security on the ground is as well is a really important issue which is persistently challenged, and you know that still more than 20% of Georgian territory is occupied by Russia, and the Russian military forces are standing just in 30 kilometers from Tbilisi. We can see from the highway, east-west highway, just a military base of Russian Federation, and just in several minutes, if they want it, so they can go into, if they are allowed, of course, to enter our capital. So it's a huge challenge, and it's a challenge which we are experiencing already for last 3 decades. It's important as well that in this timing, European Union is standing with us. European Union is on place, and you know that Union Monitoring Mission is a single mission which is providing security on the ground. And notwithstanding the issue that they are not allowed to cross the occupation line and go to the occupied territory, but still it's an observer and monitoring mission which provides security to Georgia, and we can be developed on this with this support. So to keep this on the agenda and to have the conflicts in mind, it's really important, and to keep it in everyday talks with the partners, and especially when we are talking with the Russian Federation. So we have to remind always that the borderization is still in place, So active occupation process is still on place, so militarization is still on place, and we have to have somehow to respond to this. So we have decided to respond with the development, and we have to decide to make our country more prosperous, to show that we are, as a nation, which want to be the full-fledged member of the European Union in the North Atlantic Organization. And due to this reason, so what is our foreign policy path, we are experiencing our difficulties as well. So you know that in every our single move or our single progress toward, would it be one organization or another, we have the reaction of the Russian Federation and aggressive reaction of the Russian Federation, which is assigned in borderization, for example. In every single decision which we have the positive decision from the European Union, we see that so-called border line is moved forward and new barbed wire fences are installed at our territory. So it is crucial for us to have on this proper response from international community and proper response to stop the occupied force at our territory. It was really important, and it was my pleasure as well to welcome the ministers of foreign affairs when they were visiting our country and they were studying the security situation in our region. And it was really important, and it was the clear signal that Europe is there, that European Union in action, and we need to find out the ways how to develop the situation and how to solve this really challenging moment, because after 2008, after war of 2008, so we are witnessing now and experience the most challenging period in our country. You know the situation, what is in the region. You know that after the Second Karabakh War, so Russia militarily settled in Azerbaijan. So Russia is now not only in Armenia, but in Azerbaijan as well. And Russia is on the way, important transit way between Europe and Asia. And they already are challenging this as well. And due to this reason, so we are asking our partners just to pay more attention and to move more actively towards concrete decisions. Would it be economy or would it be concrete policy decisions? We, as I have mentioned, and there is no question that we are determined to be, once when we are ready, the part of European Union and NATO, and its determination is written in our constitution. There is a clear message in it that Georgia is going to become the member of the European Union and member of the NATO, and it's decided by our population. More than 80% of population is supporting this path. And we are going to have our apply as well for the EU membership. Yes, we know that it's going to be a challenging. We know that we have to do more, but we are happy that we are going to do more, and we are happy that we have to make more reforms and be more engaged in the processes where Europe is presented, and Europe must be in Georgia, as I have mentioned already, all the time, and we are determined to be in Europe as well. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. And Orissa, let's head over to you. Ask also in Ukraine. I think we can say that there's a slowdown of the reform process inside of the country. We still have the security challenge, So I think Ukraine is not in an easy situation. So how would you frame it at the moment? What are the key points?
Thank you, Stefan, and I hope I don't feel too awkward because it's my first analog conference after a year and a half of being facing the screen. So really nice to see eyes of people. Hopefully this will also help bring some new ideas, because I think that's what these conferences are about, to confer, to decide on something new. But I would like to come back first to Svetlana before I turn into Ukraine, and then I would like to bow to all the courage of Belarusian people. You know, I really emphasize with that because I come from Ukraine, where our 3 democratic protests actually succeeded, and it's a big gift that it was hard-won, but it's a great stepping stones to that democracy that Ukraine aspires to be. And when we are thinking about 30 years ago, when countries like Ukraine, Georgia, and others became independent, Belarus, there was that feeling that we already tore down that wall, that was an illusion, that we already tore down that wall. And each of these democratic protests that we are succeeding, we are taking it brick by brick, and this is what's happening. And you know, this tragic death of Vitaly Shishov in Kiev shows that Russia actually weaponizes situation both in Belarus and in Ukraine, and nobody is secure even being outside of Belarus. And I think that's why cooperation of countries of liberal democracy protecting Belarusian activists whenever they are is a paramount task at this moment. And Svetlana didn't mention Russia in her presentation, but I would like to say we will not assist democratic Belarus without addressing an issue with Russia. It's difficult, it's very difficult, but I think that's a cornerstone of support for the regime. That is not something what Belarusian people want. We at Chatham House have, in addition to Ukraine Forum, a new Belarus initiative, and what we do there is a lot of public opinion polling. If you go on the website, you will see data, and you see the data that inside society, Belarusians want Russia to stay neutral, to stay out of business, not to support the regime, and to give Belarus, they want to have friendly relations with Russia, I'm not denying that, but they don't want this Putin's regime to arm actually Lukashenko, which we're going to see now at the border of European Union, a new military build-up because of military supply that will come to Belarus, and that is bordering Ukraine, and Kiev Oblast is bordering Belarus, so it's really threatening not just Belarus, not just European Union, but of course Ukraine. And of course the challenges, I mean, that is the challenge. Russia is a big challenge. And I think that it's very unfortunate the way Russia itself is going, and it's going completely in a direction that I would imagine will cause a lot of troubles in the coming midterm. It's unfortunate that Putin is really reawakened that anti-Westernism inside Russia, but also is doing it through disinformation and propaganda in the neighborhood against European Union, against the United States. So there is quite a lot of toxicity in the public space. And this is the space where European Union has to operate, where Ukrainian democratic forces have to operate. It's not a free field, you know, you have to fight for the truth. You have to be strategic in your communications. And that is not going to change, unfortunately, and Putin is reaffirming that he's not going to change with that essay on history and other things he has time to do, because that is ideological a position that he wants young generation of Russians to grow with. Then, of course, we have US and Afghanistan and everything. Of course, Ukraine is perceived US to be its ally. We had a quite successful visit to Washington yesterday by President Zelensky's new strategic partnership. Hopefully, it will also give some good news to the United States to communicate that it can be a reliable ally. Of course, Ukraine is not Afghanistan. Georgia is not Afghanistan. Ukrainians there are no US troops on the ground. Ukrainians are dying for Ukraine themselves, and Ukraine is not a failed state. So hopefully that US partnership will sustain, but of course everybody is realistic in Ukraine. You know, US is all about 3C, right? China, COVID, climate. And of course, we, countries in the region, are trying to plug in, for example, in climate, or to work together towards public health and COVID. But it's not the same United States, and it continues a trend, if you want, from Obama and on with Trump. So that's a reality on the ground. And now European Union. I would not call European Union a challenge, but I think there is that open-ended question of the future of political association and membership. Let's be honest, people are, especially political elites, they need that kind of pledge that they can put on their political agenda saying, we will deliver that. Ukraine, in particular, has this written in the constitution. Ukraine pledges to be member of NATO and European Union. So that causes some frustration, and it gives ground for, again, anti-EU sentiment. But I would say, and those who travel to Ukraine, you would see an amazing horizontal integration with the European Union through education. Ukrainians are studying in Europe, through labor migration, which is quite circular. I wouldn't say, you know, it's very beneficial to the European Union. business, new programs that the EU started, the Youth for Business, to support SME, to support that growth of the middle class that is exactly needed to promote to promote democratic agenda. Visa-free regime with European Union, there was a recent opinion polling, was considered #1 success in Ukrainian 30 years independence. This is where people feel the added value of mobility. I'm sure Georgians, Moldovans, and others really appreciate it. But of course, the big question remains, and I think it's a challenge, is EU's internal discussion about our neighborhood, about Eastern neighborhood, for the same matter about Western Balkans. And I think that internal frank discussion about how Berlin, Paris sees the neighborhood will define what will happen with the European policy towards the neighborhood. I think Brussels, after Euromaidan, demonstrated amazing resolve in setting up special reform group for Ukraine. Maybe there will be one set up for Moldova. I don't know what are the plans. But I think there was quite a lot of success in having dedicated staff, expert, and funding to lead Ukraine, frankly speaking, hand by hand, through very painful reforms. So I think that that internal discussion and discussion on the perception of threats, whether, Germany, France, Poland, Estonia perceive the same threat vis-à-vis Russia, vis-à-vis China, unless there is this kind of unified perception of threats, we are not going to be able to have unified foreign policy. And finally, I think all our countries, Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine, face big break that has to be taken out of the wall, which is the chronic capitalism and vested interests that created the system of limited access order. And we can talk about how you can help, tear down that wall. But this is what stops really modernization in Ukraine and in Georgia and in Moldova. And I think this is where EU could come with a new summit with a big modernization agenda and explain how that modernization could be done together. And we can talk about it maybe if we have time in the second panel. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to all the panelists. I think we already have 1 hour in the discussion. I just wanted to ask now in the next step, so what's coming ahead with the summit, what to expect, what is realistic. I don't know. I also want to give an opportunity to ask questions to you. Just a moment, yeah? So maybe I asked Svetlana, because I think you already proposed a lot of what the EU can do for Belarus. But I just want to ask you, does the EU has the right impact, the right instruments to impact on Lukashenko? So what are the right instruments at the moment to impact on the regime? Yeah, we heard that Lukashenko left or wants to leave. Left Eastern Partnership. But what are the instruments which would give leverage or which would impact him in his action from the EU side? What would you say?
First of all, European Union has to be consistent in their policy. Lukashenko is not recognized as legitimate president. Elections were fraudulent, so there shouldn't be any deals with regime now and in future until changes will come in our country. So don't have any deals with him. Don't trade with political prisoners. Create multiple points of pressure on the regime on the one hand, but on the other hand, increase assistance to civil society, because civil society now in awful position when so many organizations were closed in Belarus. So many businesses were closed and had to flee the country to continue their activity. Mass media was absolutely independent. Mass media was destroyed in Belarus and also have to continue the job from exile. And at this difficult moment, democratic countries have to put their shoulder to us. So, and this, the situation is non-conventional in Belarus, and the approach has to be non-conventional. Just we have to be flexible and inclusive, to look for new ways how to deliver this help, first of all, to those who are staying in Belarus, but also to those who are working from exile. For example, if we are talking about Eastern Partnership, Eastern Partnership programs are working only with state organizations. But if so many small businesses were closed in Belarus, they had to flee, but there are still Belarusian organizations. Belarusians are working there. So we have to find out the way how to include, if we are talking about businesses, into Eastern Partnership programs, understanding that they were deprived of this state, help me, of the state, yes, yeah. And the same about media. They are not state anymore, they are not registered, but they are continuing their work. So we have together, we have to look for these approaches, and frankly speaking, we are working very hard with Catalina and Oliver Vilheli just to understand how European Union can be more helpful in this situation, and we have to be inventive, we have to be creative, because regime is deprived with the help of violence and guns, all the possibilities to work normally. So we have to survive somehow. And I'm grateful to all the attempts of neighboring countries to assist us in this.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you very much also for being very concrete. I just changed a little bit the sign, and I think I bring you in now to ask some questions. We collect questions, and then maybe we do the second questions as a short final round. So there's the first question. Please introduce yourself, and I would like to collect several questions.
Thank you. I would just to add some positive element, I will bring one more member.
Microphone is not working, is my impression.
So I will bring now a positive moment.
Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I introduce myself. So I introduce one more member of the European Neighborhood Policy. It's Armenia. So I'm ambassador of Armenia from Prague, and I also I'm covering Slovenia. So unfortunately, my country is a member of Eastern Partnership, and signatory of the Comprehensive Enhanced Partnership Agreement, and having fully democratic, free and fair elections just recently, but no reason is not represented here. So the question is, so do you think that attempts to divide the Eastern Partnership into more or less advanced countries will definitely create internal divides that posing a real challenge to the inclusivity, which is the very essence and the philosophy of the Eastern Partnership? And one small comment. We are listening, and I fully share the opinion of George and colleague that the conflict sometimes should be on agenda because we talk about them, and it's very important to talk about them, especially when we can see now that Azerbaijani troops, supported by Turkey, are on the Armenian territory today, and fighting is going on. And the Turkey is militarily well settled in Azerbaijan. So just few information.
Yeah, we collect. Please, here, can we have the microphone here? Are there further questions?
Thank you very much. My name is Mirek Topolánek. I had a privilege to push through within the European structures to organize, to host it, and at the end of the day, to moderate the first Eastern Partnership Summit in Prague, 8th of May 2009. I think I have some right to introduce you some summary. 2008, annexion of South Ossetia and Abkhazia, later annexion of Crimea and destabilization of the eastern Ukraine, maybe the last war between Armenia and Azerbaijan in Nahorny Karabakh, Maybe Moldova is going well, I don't know exactly. But manipulated elections in Belarus last year and violence and terror in this country, I think it is not a very beautiful picture of our initiative from this time, and I'm a little bit afraid the situation won't be better, because we are able to use some soft power, soft tools to help politically, economically, but without the hard power, without the US, the country left this region, and I think it is visible with Nord Stream 2 policy of Biden, and without unity of European Union, because the second interest, Mediterranean initiative, and the big threat from the Maghreb countries in the North Africa, Middle East, and migration wave is a second very strong interest of European Union. We don't know. We are not unified in this issue, and unfortunately, the last project, Nord Stream 2, characterized by a sentence of my friend Angela Merkel, it is just commercial project, showed very plastically what's going on. My question is, do we understand that without some hard power, it's impossible to stop this movement of vital interests and vital borders of Russia to the West? Do we understand it? Thank you.
Thank you. There's another question in the back. Okay,
I
take
can.
2 or 3 more.
I was Zerka, European Council on Foreign Relations, ECFA. 3 short questions about Belarus. Minister Aurescu mentioned more sanctions, positive incentives, putting pressure on the regime. It sounds reasonable, but like more of the same. I would like to hear what's the theory of change. Why should that change the calculation and change the situation on the ground, or what is that we are actually planning to achieve with that? Second thing, international justice. Is any of the capitals present here considering seriously putting Lukashenko under international criminal justice, which there apparently are some ways to do so? And third thing, mentioned by my predecessor, the US. How do you see the US role on Belarus now that it's not just Biden, the president, but Biden who left Afghanistan, and Biden administration, which made the previously mentioned decision on Nord Stream 2. So how do you see the US role and US-EU cooperation on this? Thank you.
Thank you. There's another question on this side.
My name is Dinara Habibuleva, and I'm from Ukraine. It seems like Russia has really imperialistic plans for all Eastern Partnership countries now, and therefore I would like to ask about what EU can do for fighting against Russia propaganda, because it seems like it's going on so well. Because the project, as mentioned before, Speaker, Nord Stream 2, is really pretty showed the opportunity and the window for Russia enter to European agenda, European more closer agenda, and it seems like a Ukrainian question and our people are dying still. Every day you can see it in the news, but the Ukrainian question goes down, and we see that economical question between EU and Russia going up. Therefore, I think we cannot put down the security issue, because Ukraine now is a border between EU and so imperialistic and aggressive country. I think we need to pay attention for this question. If you have some thoughts about it and some concrete steps to go forward, I will so happy to hear it.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Because, okay, then I take a final question from here, and then I would just close it to give it back to the panel.
Thank you very much. Salome Shapakidze from Georgia, Director General for European Integration. My question concerns the summit. Back to the title of this panel, it was mentioned that when East Partnership was launched, of course, we lived in quite different world. Today we are living in completely different world. It was also mentioned that the last summit was just 4 years ago. We skipped one summit. So, I mean, the new summit, the upcoming summit has even more importance. So 1 decade is already behind. We are facing the new decade, so it's important that the EU keeps or strengthens its position and says that Eastern Partnership is of strategic importance for EU. What could we expect from the upcoming summit? Can we expect that the EU once again underlines the importance of this region? Because it's vital for all of us and for the democratic development of each and every state of the European Eastern Partnership. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I also would like to ask exactly this question to all the panelists as a final question. And maybe we start with you, Bogdan.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it was very interesting to hear the colleagues, especially from Georgia and Ukraine. And indeed, during my first intervention, I stressed the importance of resilience. And at the same time, the fact that I mentioned the fact that these frozen or protracted conflicts are hampering the development of these countries and the reform process. At the same time, let me now, in my second intervention, try to see the same things from the opposite angle. Because at the same time, well, indeed, these protracted conflicts are hampering the development and the reform processes in these countries. But if we speak about, well, building resilience, that means that building resilience in front of, well, the challenges put by, let's say, the increasing Russian pressure in the region and against these countries, and by the challenges which are created by these frozen or protracted conflicts. Well, building resilience in front of these challenges means fighting with the instruments of the reform in your own country. So you shouldn't perhaps use these protracted conflicts as an excuse for not doing the reform process. The reform process is something which helps you in coping with these challenges. So from this perspective, the best thing the authorities in all these countries can do, and this is valid for the Republic of Moldova, which has a huge, unique opportunity now to work together with the EU in, well, building a resilient society, a more, well, efficient, democratic society, but also in Ukraine and also in Georgia, which is extremely important for the stability of South Caucasus. I think what you should do and you can do is to continue this reform process, because this is helpful for yourself, for your own, resilience. So, trying to answer the question of the distinguished Armenian ambassador to Prague. Well, I think it is important to maintain a sustainable and efficient balance between, one hand, the principle of differentiation and the principle of inclusiveness. And belonging to one group or another, a more advanced group of countries or less advanced, this is something which, belongs to the respective country's choice. And this is very much in connection with what I said previously. Continuing the reform process or pursuing the reform process, aligning to the standards and values of the European Union, which is something that Romania did during the accession process. Well, it's something that is helping you, going in one group or another. This depends on the level of ambition and the level of effort. Well, I think we shouldn't say, well, let's keep all these countries in the same, basket or at the same level. Let's reward those who are, more efficient in the reform process, because this is in their own, interest. And this creates the opportunity for more support from the part of the European Union in terms of, monitoring mechanism, cooperations, economic support, and so on, expertise, etc. The question about, hard power countering Russia. Yes, hard power, but it's not the EU to do that, it's NATO. And NATO is doing that on the eastern flank. That's why we had, during the summit on the 14th of June in Brussels, decisions about the 2030 reflection process agenda of NATO. That's why we are now starting the negotiation of a new strategic concept. And one of the most important issues, which is at the core of this effort, is increasing the defense and, well, deterrence posture of the alliance, including on the eastern flank. What we have to do is to increase the cohesiveness of the eastern flank from the northern part to the southern part of the Black Sea, where Romania is located, because we see that, well, there are challenges along the eastern flank. And we see that Russia is seeing the eastern flank as a whole, and then not divided between the north and the south of the eastern flank. So it is, well, NATO which should respond to this challenge through an increased posture which allows a more effective dialogue with Russia. As you know, we have this two-track approach. Dialogue, but dialogue based on, well, strong deterrence and defense. About Belarus, I think I have...
Pick up some questions.
I will pick the last question. Now, about what the Eastern Partnership Summit will bring new. Well, it can bring a lot of new things. It can bring, well, for instance, the deliverables like creating regular formats of dialogue in key sectorial areas. It can bring the diversification of financing mechanism for the reforms in the EAP states. It can bring targeted training programs or support missions for judicial reform, or setting up legal approximation facilities aimed at helping the harmonization with the EU acquis. It can bring a lot of things. But I think it can also bring, but this depends, of course, on the well, consensus at the level of the EU. It can bring also more in terms of European perspective for the countries in the Eastern Partnership willing to join the European Union. And I think Romania is one of the countries supporting this approach. I know that there is not consensus at the level of the EU as far as the, how the Eastern Partnership instrument is seen from the perspective of helping these countries to join the European Union. But I think we shouldn't be shy, because as far as Romania was concerned, during the accession process, this was an extremely important tool, the enlargement policy, for the reform process in our country. And we think that this is worth following also as far as the current Eastern Partnership countries.
Thank you. Maybe give you the next word, and you don't need to answer all the questions.
Yes, no, because I'm on the panel with Bogdan, and he's making my job a lot easier. So, and since he's answered most of the questions, and again, I agree with most of what he said. Let me just make a couple of brief remarks. I'd argue that one thing that hasn't changed about the Eastern Partnership as such is our overriding objective, which is to have safe, stable, prosperous, and peaceful neighbors. But I mean, the question is really whether we have succeeded in that or not. I mean, and here I'd be a bit more pessimistic. And yet, I think it's important that we recognize the reality on the ground. As we are gearing up for the December Eastern Partnership Summit, and I say in a nutshell what to expect from the summit. I'd say two words: resilience and recovery. And really, it's all about matching our ambition with our commitment. So, and Bogdan, he's spoken, at length about resilience, and I think, I really believe we should make it our priority, or one of our priorities. But I think also that the post-COVID economic recovery should be also one of our top priorities, and we should really invest more into helping the Eastern Partnership countries. There's been a lot said about trying to bring the US on board. And again, I agree we should try to do more to get the US involved. But let's not forget there is yet another country we should try to work much more closely with, and that's the UK. And I think not only when it comes to Belarus, but also other Eastern membership countries, we should try to coordinate as closely as possible with the UK. I mean, as a matter of fact, it was like some 3 weeks ago, I visited London, and when speaking to my British counterpart, we were talking about this, and the Brits, they are very excited about teaming up with the EU, although they wouldn't say it publicly, but I think there is room for close coordination, and the UK has a role to play. So yes, so of course the US, we should do everything possible to make sure that they are as involved as possible, but also let's not forget about the UK, because we should also coordinate with them quite closely.
Okay, thank you. Karina, I will give you the last word. I want that you can wrap up also a little bit and react. And that's why I just, maybe Aurescu, you react also to this Ukraine question on this information, and please not react to all questions, but just make the key points.
Just quickly. Well, I think everybody's fighting for attention. We've been here watching the enlargement for the Balkans. We see Eastern Partnership region saying we want membership. We want memberships. 3 countries with the deep and comprehensive free trade agreements. So US and EU are torn for attention, and they cannot deliver attention to everybody. And I think it's time for the region also to grow up in that understanding. I think we should actually celebrate what this region has achieved for the last 30 years. I mean, it's an amazing change from the totalitarian societies to, market economies, imperfect democracies, pluralism, and still quite a lot of digital innovation that is taking place in the region. And I think that is important. I would like to say 3 things that can boost, and maybe for the summit to consider. Of course, security, and in this particular case, I think special cooperation between the NATO, EU, UK, US is important, because I think they can deliver a lot on hard security, and enhanced opportunity partnerships offer that. EU should deliver more on human security, which is fit for, and it's already doing some steps, especially in the Black Sea region with communities impacted by the Crimean annexation. Second, I think it's important for the EU and the region to look at the outflows of corrupt money from the regions that are being harbored in capitals, not only in London, but also in Vienna and a few others. And I think it's important to set up some task force, because this enables corruption in our region. And finally, I think really it's all about perception. Half of my family is French, and 2 of my belle-filles, when we told them that we're going to Montenegro for holidays, they were scared. And I think we should change the perception of our partnership region for people from France and from Berlin. They used to understand it's Europe. So I think we still need to invest much more in Erasmus, in university exchanges, in fellowships, and cities, because this is where the future is, of Green Deal, of IT technology. It's building partnership between our cities that will create jobs in the cities and will make people stay where they are, rather than leave Moldova, out-migrate from Georgia, to a lesser degree from Ukraine. So I think EU is force for modernization. And I think we should not, of course, get bogged down in these details, but I think you know, I don't want in 5 years some Ukrainian intellectuals writing the tragedy of Eastern Europe about abandoned West. This region is future West. It's already becoming the West. And I think EU should give a very good push to this society that exists. This demand exists in the society. Political elites not always match it, but Katerina knows, you all know it. When you go to countries, when you go to Minsk, you know what you're talking about. It's a future European Union. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Minister Janjala, maybe you a couple of words?
Thank you. Yes, so we have already for 11 years Eastern Partnership, and it's in action. So we have a question, is it a success story or not? So from our point of view, it is. It is because we 3 countries from Eastern Partnership so already have concluded association agreements, DCFTAs with European Union. We have the visa-free regime, and as you have mentioned already, it was one of the most successful steps toward our cooperation. And it's important. It's important to have more development and more progress. Of course, we have challenges. Of course, it was mentioned several times that Russia is one of the huge challenges for us. And Russian disinformation, Russian propaganda is a huge challenge for us. Just for example, I can say that in Georgia, we know that more than 100 non-governmental organizations are established which are working for the disinformation, and they're providing the Russian narrative in Georgia. So we have this challenge as well in place. Association trio, and I don't agree that it's a division of the Eastern Partnership. Association trio is a progress of the Eastern Partnership. And we 3 have achieved success with association agreements. For example, we have fulfilled already about 40% of the regulations which are envisaged in association agreement. And now we should look for the new opportunities. So, and association trio is an opportunity for further development of the Eastern Partnership. We had already established some formats of association trio which was really positively met by Brussels and by the single member states. You know that association trio foreign ministers visit was in Brussels, and the presidents of trio with President Charles Michel were met in Batumi, and they had their really good comprehensive discussion on the further development. So we have the new post-2020 agenda from European Union as well for Eastern Partnership. We have the new Eastern Partnership investment plan. We have the new development which is related to the connectivity, which is really important. And when we are talking about the Black Sea, we always should to remember that it's a natural bridge between European countries, between the Black Sea littoral countries which belong to European continent, belong to Europe. It's important to talk when we are getting the Black Sea about the security dimension. It was raised here as well, and it's important to have there not only European players, but as well the global players like United States. So, and they are on place, and we have a really good cooperation on this matter, and the Black Sea security dimension is in our policy, and it's in place. So we have the 3C initiative, which is as well the really important point. And I remember when I was working in one of the Baltic states as ambassador, we were rising and we were pushing this issue on the agenda, because 3C initiative without the Black Sea and the western part of the Black Sea cannot be fully completed, because there are talks about the transport links, there are talks about the energy links, and without Ukraine, without Moldova, without Georgia and wider region, it cannot be complete and cannot be the full project. And of course, when we are talking about the Eastern Partnership Summit and about the prospects, what we are expecting them, Of course, we are expecting more action. Of course, we are expecting more support. And when Minister mentioned about the resilience and recovering, yes, it's necessary. And for this, we need a concrete action plan, and we need the strong messages for our societies to make our development more effective and to make our development more European. So, thank you.
Svetlana, then Katarina.
Yeah, there was a couple of questions directly about Belarus, so I'd like to say a couple of words. Yeah, and so what can be achieved by sanctions, you asked. Sanctions maybe is the only now leverage that the European Union have to put pressure on the regime. And sanctions for sure work. They split elites, they hit regime, they hit corruption, and sanctions can make regime change their behavior. And sanctions should be adequate to the situation. If Lukashenko's regime will, increase these legal migrations or will make some more ugly things, so the response of democratic countries should be adequate. But sanctions work only when they are joint, when sanctions should be imposed by European Union, United Kingdom, USA, Canada, and other democratic countries, and only in this case they will be working. So there shouldn't be half measures towards the regime. And the role of the USA, we understand that the USA is one of the greatest democracies, and we share the common values. So the USA should have strong voice about Belarus, and Belarus should be on the agenda not only in the European Union, our neighboring countries, but also in the USA. And we are collaborating with the USA government rather closely, and we give them ideas. For example, European Union launched a comprehensive plan for new Belarus, and we propose the same idea for the USA, and I hope that they will do the same. And it's a good message for Belarusians and for businesses in Belarus, so they have alternative to stay on this sinking Titanic with the regime, or to join a civil society and build a new Belarus. That's it, Bogdan. Thank you.
Okay, Katarina, please. Sorry for, and please also wrap
Thank
up.
you very much. Also landing me with the unthankful task of, I'm not going to summarize because that would take a long time, but I will react around 3 points. One is, Minister Aurescu mentioned resilience, Minister Kulhanek as well. It is actually the meta-narrative of the communication on the future of Eastern Partnership. And it's a concept that allows us to both bring in the security element, although not going as far as Mr. Topolanek mentioned. Of course, if there is an army, it's easier to convince people of your interests, but that's not in the, we in the Commission operate in the Venn diagram of the consensus, right? So you may have those here, and then there is a consensus in something, and that's the terrain in which I operate. The dreams belong elsewhere, but what the concept of resilience brings in is both the digital transformation, both the green agenda, societal resilience, economic resilience, but also security, resilience to cyber threats, resilience to disinformation. So we find it particularly useful concept, although when we were penning it, we did not expect that the first test that will come of the concept of resilience would be COVID. And it's something that I should have mentioned in the first round, but I think that in the times of crises, you get to know your friends. And I think we stepped up very, very quickly. There was the 2-3 weeks at the beginning when the world, and this was the Chinese and Russian narrative, the EU is only looking at itself and not helping anybody else. And we actually really very quickly stepped up, got emergency assistance. We put together, mobilized and reallocated 1 billion euros, both for medical as well as COVID support, as well as the economic support to businesses and governments through resilience contracts, etc., that were suffering, and did it very quickly, and that changed the mood. And when we ran the opinion polls last summer, I think that the EU was #1 supporter in times of COVID in every single of the 6 countries. So I think that was actually a good moment. The second point I want to make, and also react in that way to the question on what to do about propaganda and disinformation. Apart from the active wars and aggression and the hybrid, and the frozen conflicts, Russia has actually incredibly active narratives and disinformation game. And Ukraine happens to be, apart from the liberal democracy, the #2 goal happens to be Ukraine. And you will excuse me, Stefan, if I say that's exactly what they do. Your question on Ukraine was, oh, they're slowing down reforms. Nothing is more furthered from that characterization than the reality in Ukraine. There's no slowing down of reforms. This is the Russian narrative that knows that this works with Western Europe. They listen to it. Everybody, the less one knows about Ukraine, the stronger views on how they are not doing reforms. Just in the last half a year, opening of the land market, historic unbundling of the Naftogaz, adoption of 2 incredibly seminal laws on the judiciary, inland waterways. I mean, I could go on and on and on listing things that in normal settled democracies, governments would do in a matter of years as opposed to a few months. So let's be very careful. This is precisely what they do and do very, very well, because undermining trust in the partners as well as undermining trust in the EU, that happens as our Georgian colleague was mentioning, is actually a crafty game, and we are still trying, playing catch up. So what we have done now what we are preparing right now, we are at the beginning of a 7-year programming cycle, is actually new massive programs on building local resilience to disinformation, fact-checking, analytical services, development of software that can trace information. There is actually an observatory, because we suffer, and COVID is a perfect example, we all suffer from disinformation and changing of experiences to sort of help locally to fight the disinformation. Okay, that's my second point, and my third point, the summit. I wrote it down so I can actually, not go on and on. We spoke about resilience, we spoke about recovery, and reform is something that Minister Aurescu mentioned. I very, very, very much agree that the more reform agenda gets solidified and implemented, the better off the countries are, and better off we are to have stable and prosperous and peaceful neighborhoods. So what we have for the summit is, and we just published it in early July, is a program for the next generation of Eastern Partnership that has 2 pillars. And one pillar is the already mentioned economic investment plan, where we will put 2.3 billion euros over the 7 years in grants, and work with the international financial institutions, and the estimates we have is that should generate about 17 billion euros in investments. So I think that's an important economic support program. And by the way, Eastern Partnership doesn't work only through governments. To SMEs, for example, we go via EBRD, via KfW, EIB, etc. So we work directly with institutions. So that's one element, is the investment aspect. And the second pillar is governance, which is the reform agenda on improving governance in a broad sense. Anti-corruption, as Orisia was talking about, judiciaries, where hopefully we'll re-engage with Georgia constructively to move the agenda, and really bringing good governance into the society. So these are the 2 main pillars, and what else the summit will bring is new topics. So we, under the resilience, I like that concept because it allows us to bring in areas of work for which we don't have necessarily consensus if we start with a big title. But we already have a program with NATO, we already have a trust fund with NATO, and we are going to continue working. So through them, in partnership with them, we can actually help also on harder security aspects. Obviously, we are not going to be in the business of financing weapons, but we certainly can do a lot around that agenda. And the last point I want to make is on differentiation. I liked the way you phrased it, that looking at the trio, it's not splitting the Eastern Partnership, it's building on it. One thing to realize is that the deep and comprehensive free trade agreements and the association agreements are incredibly demanding on the countries. This is not a cake to eat. This is a really rigorous, very, very, very complex agreements, and that require level of, some of it is even going further than what we had to do in the pre-accession period, ironically. So it's not an easy agenda, and therefore it makes a lot of sense to have some topics, the sectoral integration, the trade discussions, etc., in a trio format, because those are the, I think as one of the ministers mentioned, those are the choices the countries made, right? The association agreement and DCFTA was on the table for Yerevan as well, and we all know what happened, right? So those choices were made, and that has consequences, which is the big reform agenda that's required, that's much bigger than with the other three countries, and therefore it makes sense to have formats that discuss the integration sectorally further. And the one example I will use, I'm going to Kiev 2 weeks from now, because I co-chair with the Deputy Prime Minister a Green Deal dialogue with Ukraine, which brings all the different sectoral, from agriculture through environment, through energy, etc., all these things together. And that's the kind of thing that you do as part of the association agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That has been a very rich panel. I think it was really good discussion on Eastern Partnership. I really want to thank all the panelists. It was really added value for me. We, as the German Council on Foreign Relations, were really happy to cooperate here with the Bled Forum. Thank you for staying and discussing with us on the last panel today. But I think really it was worth to. And again, let's thank and wish you a good way back home. And enjoy the evening.